Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Princess. Thank you for sharing with us today. So as Will said, we have a very large, thriving community in Phoenix, and I really, how it began for me was that I needed to learn how to love my son. And as some of you were here last night, I kind of talked a little bit about that. He was really in a pretty bad place, and I learned from Greg by going to one of his seminars that I was at fault. Pretty rude awakening when everything in my heart says I was loving him, giving to him, doing everything possible that I thought was loving, and he was dying emotionally. So I want to tell you just a little story. I started dating someone in January. It's kind of interesting. I began dating in a very different way. Real Love has a dating book, and it talks about collecting information to see if someone can be loving and wants to have a loving relationship. So I started to date someone who was learning Real Love principles from me. We sat and talked a lot of evenings, maybe 3 evenings a week. We would sit and we would share time together. And after about a month, he said to me, "I've learned something very profound about myself." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Well, when I met you, I thought you were a nut job." He did. He said that. And I said, "Oh, how so?" And he said, "Well, because whenever you were feeling something, you just really felt it. And you would show it." And he goes, "I really thought there was something wrong with you." And he goes, "I wasn't sure you were okay." Now get this, I'm actually just being authentic. And I said, "So what have you learned?" He goes, "I'm a liar." He said, "You're authentic, and I hide everything from the world. No one in my whole entire life knows me but you." He said, "You really get me." And that his personality type is like 15 kids in the family. He's the overachiever. He does everything for the family. He takes care of everyone. He is so pedestalized by the family that he works so hard constantly to keep up that facade. And he said, "I'm dying in it." And I said, "I know. You do everything for everyone else, and no one knows how you wake up in the morning and feel that sense of emptiness. And the reason why that's happening for you is because you don't tell them. You don't drop the cardboard cutout." And so he began to realize that he would have to start telling the truth to his family members and loved ones, or he was going to feel that sense of isolation for the rest of his life. And he chose not to. And we chose not to date anymore. Really, that kind of pain that a lot of people have inside of them, this guy really told me, he said, "I get why all of my relationships have failed." He said, "All of my family members kind of put me down all the time because I date these really good women. And then when they want to start moving in and get married and have a more connected relationship," he goes, "I dump them." And he goes, "I figured out why." He goes, "I don't really love them. And I've learned that every single one of them thinks I'm such a great guy that they do everything in the world for me. They jump through hoops. They cook for me. They do all these nice things for me. They actually think I'm the nicest guy on the planet." And he goes, "But we're trading. They give me lots of praise. And why would I not want that? When I'm feeling that empty in my life, all this stuff that they're doing for me feels so good. Why would I not be doing that?" Well, herein lies this illusion about what love is, this trading that we're talking about. He really got that. Well, in the beginning, he would come to me and say, "So why is it that I don't love them?" Well, because you're not loving them. You're just trading. So, the definition of real love is caring about another's happiness without wanting anything in return. So from our pain body that we have in our life and that wanting for love so much, we go around trying to find something to fill it. We're trading all the time. Will was talking about that trading. So if you give me 10 hits of praise every day and I give you 10 hits of pleasure, then our relationship is good. That's that sense of being in love where you're finding that, wow, we have this connection. really, really this deep connection. We feel connected and alive. And that's really where we fall in love. But the second that you stop giving me what I'm wanting, I go, well, I'm not going to give you pleasure. You stop praising me. And so at that point, the scale gets tipped and our relationships end. We start blaming the other person. You're supposed to make me happy. So real love is unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person without wanting anything in return. We really weren't taught that when we were kids. So when we look at real love, I kind of liken it to this emotional languaging that we learned when we were a kid. We learned that someone said they loved us, but then they treated us less than loving. So it became very fearful and very confusing. So I call that English. We'll just put a name to it, so I call it English. And what I've learned through real love is that there's a very different type of languaging, which I call Spanish. So we'll just call it Spanish, just to put a name to it. So I really realized that in my life, I knew nothing about Spanish. And I knew that every relationship that I had failed. I learned that I was trading, and I learned that I needed to do something different. So I came over here and said, okay, I want to learn Spanish. So most of the time, people will pick up the book, and they'll read Real Love, this wonderful book, and they'll read about the Spanish language. They'll read about it. They go, wow. What I learned from that is I wasn't fluent. There was no way I could learn how to do this language and really live it and embody love in my life. So I got some CDs. It's like listening in your car. ¿Cómo está usted? And you're trying to get fluent in this language, right? So, I go to a Spanish-speaking friend and I try to speak it and I fail again. I'm not fluent. I couldn't, it's like how do we do this? So I realized that, well, I'm going to take a couple trips down to Mexico and I'm going to talk to the shop owners, and I'm going to practice my Spanish. And I come back to Arizona, and I realize I'm still not fluent. And so what I realized is that the only way for someone to really learn the language of love is to move to Spain. Okay? You've got to immerse yourself in what it looks like in a community of people that embody love, that have learned these principles, that every single word that comes out of their mouth is talking about the language of love. Then we begin to get it. So that's what we did in Phoenix. We started teaching people the language, and then we started groups, and people could come and see it modeled because people really had no idea what that looked like. And so over time, we got a whole bunch of people. We created a Spain in Phoenix, where people can come and immerse themselves in real love. So people will move there from all over the world. They'll move across the nation. They'll immerse themselves in our community for a while so that they can learn what the language of love really is. So that's what we'll be talking about this afternoon in the workshop. What are the principles that guide our relationships? The stuff we just don't know because we keep repeating the same patterns over and over and over again. So some of the things that we'll be looking at is the four types of imitation love. Now, what Greg has done and why this is so easy to teach others is because this Spanish language is like just lasering it in. If you take almost every other teaching about love, there's some little piece that's missing, like the how-to, the real lasered in language that's not vague. What Greg has done so brilliantly is to put such an easy way of teaching this to others that there's no room anymore for the truth to not bubble up to the top, and the truth sets you free in all of our relationships. So we'll be talking about that later today. But 4 things that we go after to ease our pain: praise, power, pleasure, safety. I've been in real love for 8 years, and I found no variation on this at all. We go after 4 things to ease our pain: praise, power, pleasure, safety. We'll go over all kinds of examples this afternoon in the workshop about how they show up in our life. There's 50,000 variations on those themes. In order to get those things in our life, to get the praise, power, pleasure, safety, we have vehicles to get us there, to get those things. And they're called our getting and protecting behaviors. The getting and protecting behaviors are, if I'm empty and I'm fearful and I'm afraid, I will come to you and try to get something from you. The very opposite definition of real love. So there's going to be no love in this, right? We're either trying to get something to ease our pain, or we're trying to protect ourselves from more pain, from future pain. So we're either getting or protecting. These getting and protecting behaviors, let's see if anybody's done any of these. Attacking? Anybody ever yell at somebody else? Nobody, only one person. Thank you. None of you need to come to the workshop. None of you. Okay, so attacking, we use aggression. We get angry. One of the highest forms of arrogance is anger. Okay, we'll talk about that in the workshop also. So anger, that's attacking. Acting like a victim. Anybody have ever had their head here and blamed somebody else? Oh, life is so hard. Look what it's done to me. Look what they should have done for me, and it's not my fault. Those are the 3 mantras of a victim. If you're ever sitting with a victim and they're telling you their victim story, if you allow them to stay in that victim story, you're not loving them. Okay? There's a whole bunch of things that we do in real love that cause people discomfort, but it causes them to grow. People want to grow without discomfort, and it doesn't happen. Okay? It doesn't happen. So we'll talk about all these behaviors this afternoon, but attacking, acting like a victim, running. Have you ever had someone just disconnect from you and run? Dump you in a relationship because it got too hard? Okay? Running as in addictions to alcohol, video games, not taking responsibility, just simply not paying your bills. Running. When our pain gets really deep, we'll sleep a lot. We'll run. So running. What's the other one? Clinging. Anyone ever gone to lunch with a girlfriend that talked the whole time? And you felt so depleted when you walked away? Okay, that's one form of clinging. One form of clinging is driving by your boyfriend's house to see if he's out with another girl. Anybody done that? Come on! Nobody ever did a drive-by? I'm the only completely empty person? Okay, there's another one. Thank you. God. I'm not the only crazy person. There's so many forms of these behaviors that You ran it again? No? Okay. So clinging, many forms of them. Clinging, acting like the victim. I just went brain dead. Attacking, acting like a victim. Oh, lying. Oh, sorry. The biggest one that we do. Lying, even just that facade that we have. And we can't feel those connected relationships when I can only feel loved by you to the degree that I know you know me for who I really am. So if you're just basic lying is if I'm holding up a cardboard cutout, I can't feel loved by you even if you're giving me love. Because I think that you're only loving me for the facade. So basic lying, we know that there's all kinds of deceptive lying. There's just simply not telling the whole truth about ourselves, bragging, false praise, all kinds of ways that we lie. Stanford University did a study and said that we lie between 3 to 5 times per minute in every conversation that we're having. And it's not like the kind of deceptive lie like, I'm trying to lie to you to get out of some trouble. We're changing who we are constantly to please other people. And from that place, we can't ever authentically be happy. So we'll talk about all those behaviors. So the idea behind real love is the fact that, if I can put it this way, when we use these getting and protecting behaviors, it's like taking a baseball bat, okay? And on that baseball bat, it says, I don't love you. And on the other side, it's engraved, me, me, me. When I take this and I'm using a behavior, I'm whacking you upside the head emotionally. Okay? Who am I thinking about when I'm using a behavior? Me. When I'm lying to you, who am I protecting? Me. When I'm clinging to you to try to get more attention out of you, who am I thinking about? Me, right? When I'm running from you, who am I thinking about? So we begin to see that every getting and protecting behavior that we use is really self-centered and selfish. Now, we use a lot of really strong words in real love. We don't use any vague words like someone's anxiety. They have fear. So now what are we afraid of? We can work with that. The whole idea about the truth is, how do we get to the truth about how we're really playing out these patterns and programs in our life? So we'll say things to you like, that was selfish and self-centered, and you go, yeah, it was. That's what we do in group. So now you can feel loved by me because I'm accepting you for who you are. So we have to start with the truth, knowing what's true in our lives. What are we really doing? And knowing that when we're using any of these behaviors on another human being, we're only thinking of ourselves, and the other person clearly hears it. Now the problem is all the fear and confusion and all the things that go on in our relationships, the confusing part is we just walk away going, I don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. Why would they do that? Well, the only reason why people behave badly is because they feel empty, alone, and afraid, which is the opposite polarity from feeling loved. So what's the solution? The Beatles knew what it was. All we need is love, but we don't know how to do it. We know how to do all of these behaviors that were taught to us by our parents. We have no idea how to get out of them. But the first level of getting out of all that stuff is just the education part, becoming conscious that we actually do them. So that's step one. That's where some of the work comes in. So we've got all these programs that run from our past history. In Real Love, we say that we're believing a lie or having an expectation if we're not feeling happy. If we're not feeling happy, we're either believing a lie, all of those tapes that play in our head that we learned as a child. I'm unworthy, I'm stupid, I'm never going to make anything of myself. How many of you have any of that going on right now? Really? Really? You guys, the battle, those tapes, the monkey mind in every book, it's been called something else, automatic negative thoughts, all of that stuff that's in there is how we're responding in the world. So I might say something to you at a 1, and I'm really kind of feeling pretty loving, and I say it to you at a 1, but depending upon how heavy your old programs are, you'll hear it at a 10. Those over-exaggerated responses, I might say to you, haha, you colored your hair, and it's a new color red. And just maybe the way I said it, you'll walk out of here crying. I'm not kidding. You know this. We can see when we have over-exaggerated responses. When you get the letter from, the IRS saying, you weren't expecting some big bill, and you didn't realize you owed that much in taxes. Some people are on their knees crying, just out of control. Oh my God. Or they look at it and go, okay, I'll make the call and see what's going on there. If we have over-exaggerated responses, we've got a lot of unhealed pain still in there. Through Real Love, we put processes together to help you come out of that to where you are getting rid of the lies. And what it really is the grease that gets that wheel over there is being seen, accepted, and loved for who you really are and not changed. So through all of the different strategies of life, we found that, through a lot of therapy, we want to fix things. We're somehow broken. No, we're not broken. All we're doing is carrying some lies, some pain, and some confusion. It really gets down to being that simple. In Real Love, we have one word. It's called love and teach. It's all one word. We need love, and we need to be taught how to live life from a happy perspective, from a non-victim perspective, from a perspective that serves our happiness. And we didn't really have it when we were kids. I know that what I was taught was the opposite of that. And so for me to go out as an adult woman and try to live life, I'm creating more my own victimhood over and over and over again, because I don't really realize what contributes to my happiness. I don't know. It's very confusing. If that's what love is, I did exactly the opposite of what my parents did. I'm not going to get married if that's what white picket fence is. And I went out and just became, ran around the world and kind of whoring around and looking for pleasure and, drugs and all kinds of crap. And, I would go through a little phase of doing something, go, well, that didn't work. And I'd go through the next little phase, well, that didn't work either. But who was teaching me what worked? Who was teaching me how to find love, feel a sense of community, connect with people, and by starting this journey through Real Love, I've been able to teach hundreds and thousands of people how to do it different. It's been quite a ride. So, one of the things that I've learned through Real Love is this. I began my journey through my New Thought Church with a great minister. The day I found Real Love, I also found Esther Hicks. Esther, she's so cool. I just love Esther. So I'm listening to Real Love CDs at the same time when I'm listening to Esther Hicks. So cool. And I started to see all the parallels. Well, all the teachings take us back to the same place. And what I did, though, is I introduced the emotional guidance scale because everything about pain is driven by emotions. We have events that happen. We have judgments that'll happen immediately. Those are those over-exaggerated responses. And then we'll have feelings, and then we'll have reactions. So I started looking at this because I was really the scientist and the analyst, and I started watching all these coaching clients that were coming to me, and I was watching that, emotions drive all of these reactions in our life. So I really started studying that if I made them send me every day what their emotions were, I could track and know exactly what was going on with them and how foundationally mature they were. How was their emotion? Where was their emotional set point? And if they were bouncing all the time on the emotional guidance scale, that meant that they were totally driven by outside circumstances in their life. Pretty simple stuff, right? So if I took this emotional guidance scale and I met a new person in my life and I could understand what kind of feelings they were feeling in their life, if they were offering me information that told me about insecurity in their life, that's at number 21. They're pretty drowning. I'm not going to date you, but I might get you some help. Now notice that this is just through Real Love, then we can knowing what somebody's feeling. Now what happens is sometimes you can identify that first, but sometimes you can identify, remember that event, judgment, feeling, reaction. That feeling, reaction, sometimes we're just looking at the behaviors because they're in a behavior. So there's two things that we can kind of assess others to know how close and up personal that we need to be with them. So it can be figuring out their feelings that they're having or what kind of responses, which is those getting and protecting behaviors. So if I'm going to go into business with you, if I'm going to go into a relationship with you, even a friendship with you, I'm going to be looking at those things. It's kind of is like makes sense, right? It's kind of insane to do it any other way. Well, this is what I'm talking about in Real Love. We really just put a languaging to it so that we're not clouded in the confusion anymore. Well, the fear's still there though. So there are a lot of people that can't be touched even. We had a woman in our community, her name is Sally. She runs groups now for us. And Sally was sexually molested by every man in her family. And when she came into Real Love, she couldn't be touched because if she felt this, that meant there was something bad going to come after it. So a physical touch to her meant that there was going to be a lot of pain. So she can hug now, she can sit in people's laps, but she had to push through that. And what she did, she would come to group and she would sit with someone and they just kind of touch fingers for 3 minutes until she couldn't do it anymore. So it's facing our fears, facing those demons. This last January we have a conference, national conference in Phoenix every year where Greg comes and spends 2 days. If anybody wants to come, tickets are on sale now. But he comes and just does 2 straight days of this teaching. And this last conference, Sally decided she was going to push all the way through. And what it looks like is someone on heroin trying to get off heroin. She sweated through the whole conference, and on every break, she would go up and she'd get in Greg Bear's lap, just shaking and sweating, and she was pushing through. She was pushing through to the thing that she knew she needed to feel more than anything else in the world, which was safe, protected, and loved. She'd never had it. So we have all these different levels of pain out there, and we're finding that through Real Love, we're healing them. One of the interesting things that's popping up around the nation, and we kind of talked about this last night, that the biology and the physiology and the neurology of what's going on in our brain when we're in fear is that our brain gets mapped into that hypervigilance. And there's cuddle shacks starting across the nation. Cuddle shacks are starting to where you can actually go in and just get held. It's $60 an hour, $1 a minute. We actually need that physical touch so bad to help rewire our brain. So when I'm talking about emotions, there was a point in my life, in my practice of real love, where I started looking at that emotional guidance scale every day. And I started to say, what am I feeling? Because if I can really feel life, if I can feel everything, if I can feel all of these emotions and not freak out and not go into reactionary mode, that I can actually feel joy. And I started to describe joy to myself was really knowing that I can feel all of these emotions and that I can be an emotionally integrated, mature adult. Because the most important thing that we need to get is an aha that these feelings will not kill us. They won't hurt us. They're just a cloud floating by to give us an indicator of how much love we need. Thank you.